Thanks for listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Mike Luke. We got William Brad Allison here as well. Brad, a lot has happened since we've last talked. Primarily the highest rated Arizona football recruit of the ratings era. Now, again, I don't know if Michael Bates was the equivalent or Mike Chaska or Chuck Levy. I don't know. You could probably make that case. But of the recruiting rankings era, this is easily the highest profile player that Arizona's gotten, and he's at a position of need as well in Elijah Rushing.
Yeah, and first of all, my apologies to all us old timers, but don't be critical because there were no rank. I mean, it's like now saying, well, Arizona can't get any more parade All-Americans because there are no more parade All-Americans.
No, that was not a diss. I relied on the parade All-Americans growing up.
No. What I've seen some people, and again, they're about my age. And people I respect, like, this is not a fair compare. Well, guess what?
It is.
Guess what? Bob Elliott didn't have a chance to be a McDonald's All-American either.
Right.
This is a modern era, and really probably since, the early 2000s, maybe mid-2000s, about the time I got into the industry with recruiting rankings. And even then, I think, the numbers they use are those, they're out of 100, but they're decimals. But, yeah, I mean, this is the modern era of recruiting. This is the highest rated recruit. And it's significant for so many different reasons. And to me, honestly, landing a 5-star is probably fourth on the list of why this is a significant pickup.
Yeah, well, let's talk about, we're going to talk about that because there's a lot of issues to get to. But first and foremost, though, I think we know at this point that Jedd Fisch is going to be able to put talent around to get good offenses. I don't have a ton of doubt that when you look at his recruiting, which we're going to get to, quarterback recruiting. But you look at his recruiting, whether it's the receivers, the running backs, the quarterbacks, even across the offensive line, he's going to be able to get dudes. The question, I think, is on that defense, and especially on the defensive line. He's revamped the linebacking core. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But to get somebody like Elijah Rushing, to be able to pair him with Keona, Davis, or Wilhite, depending on, I guess, where you look at it, along with the Deuce Davis, now you've got three young, fairly intriguing edge rushers there, William.
No, and that was important because Arizona has struggled to get in quality edge rushers really since the Stoops era.
Right.
I know Kylan Wilbon had one good year. Harris had a solid year.
Hunter Echols has been the best pass rusher since Scooby Wright. That's a problem.
Yeah, and Scooby Wright.
Hunter Echols.
Scooby Wright came off the linebacker position as well. So yeah, you need to be able to solidify that. Obviously Arizona's not going to always be able to rush 4, but you need to be occasionally being able to rush 4 and get to the quarterback, whether that's with those two defensive ends or those ends eating up blocks and letting your defensive tackle go in solo. You need pass rush in the modern football world. Doesn't matter how good your corners are if they're on an island for 7-8 seconds. Significant from that standpoint. And again, we'll figure out just how good Wilhite / Davis is. His rankings seem a little low from what I hear, but he also
Greg Biggins said he will take he will make a very large leap in their next ratings.
Yeah, and frankly, we just need to see more of him. He played half a year last year, and I'm also really want to see what those two look like. There's really no reason they should be dominating at least the local teams that they play.
Well, you look at it, the South Point, especially on the defensive line, and people ask me all the time about Luis Cordova, and this is no offense to Luis Cordova. Brad, and you've known this from the beginning of time, he's another defensive lineman. Just because you have an offer doesn't mean it's an offer. It's not a committable offer. He'll probably end up at like New Mexico State, something like that. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you've got a 4- and a 5-star edge rusher, and you've got a certified Division I defensive tackle as well, that's a front that you generally don't see in Tucson. As a matter of fact, I don't think we've ever seen it in Tucson.
Yeah, I think the best front that I can remember was the Ironwood Ridge team that had Jake Fisher. They had a guy named Cotman who was a hybrid defensive end linebacker. He ended up playing at Mesa Community College. They had another big defensive end who I think walked on at ASU. And they were dominant. I mean, that defense was dominant. Conversely, I'll give you a good example. Julius Holt's son. May Julius rest in peace.
Yeah.
Now, granted, he did not have a lot of help around him. He was triple teamed, and was pretty much a non-factor in the few games that I saw him. Now, again, some of that was the number of guys that teams were throwing at him. But
Cotman went to UCF. Thank you there, Bob. Appreciate it.
Again, I think he started at Mason Community College. If he went to UCF, I loved Cotman, honestly. I really thought he was pretty close to Jake Fisher's level, a little bit bigger, not quite as athletic as Jake. Not that Jake was the most athletic guy, but Jake was deceptively athletic. I wish I could remember the other kid's name. So we'll see. In reality, if you have two edge rushers who are that good at the high school level, with the exception of a handful of Phoenix teams, these guys should be shaking hands in defensive back or offensive backfields all season.
All right, we need to talk about Jedd Fisch here. We got a lot to get to this show, but Jedd Fisch first and foremost. Again, I'm going to keep saying this, and I've said this a million times. I thought the Jedd Fisch hire was absolutely bizarre. I had no clue what to make of it. It looked like a journeyman that has been from place to place, and he's basically been your fill a hole hire. When he was hired, though, he started saying all the right things, did all the right things. But Brad, unlike some other guys that basically said it and didn't do it, we're 2+ years in, and he's continuing to say and do the right things. Because make no mistake, Elijah Rushing's father played at the highest level of Division I football. He knows what he's doing as far as where he's going to be sending his kid and all of that. He's not sending his kid to a place that he thinks his kid can't develop into what he needs to develop in. So big kudos to Jedd Fisch for even making this a possibility.
And I'll tell you this. I will give Jedd Fisch a lot of credit. When he was hired, I didn't like the hire. I did a podcast saying this is what he has to do to win me over. And he's done it. He is out in the community. He is finding a recruiting niche, and a few of them. He is hitting Arizona hard. He's done those Zoom meetings with all the
coaches in the state.
All the coaches in the state. He has made South Point a priority. He's made Tucson a priority. He's really done everything from a marketing standpoint and a recruiting standpoint. I think the only thing he hasn't done is do something niche on offense or defense. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that pro style offense is the way to get quarterbacks, because in theory, if you play 4 years of quarterback in a pro style offense, you've got a leg up NFL wise compared to a lot of these guys running spread offense, even though the NFL's incorporating it.
Brad Rich said, again, Brad Rich, I cannot stand people with two first names. I do not like that at all. Two first names suck. Those people generally stay away from them. Right, Brad?
Yeah, especially it's even worse when it's a man's name and a woman's name.
That's true. That's true. Well, my last name isn't Vanessa. But
mine is Alice.
But it's not spelled the same way. So you don't have to deal with it.
Blame Ellis Island for that one.
Right. Brad Rich, though, sitting here today, do Wilhite and Rushing have the potential to be our best tandem edge rushers ever? I think they have the potential to be better than Brooks Reed and Ricky Elmore. But then when you start going back into the early to mid 90s, when you're looking at, when you just got Teddy on one side.
Yeah, Brewski Hoffman's hard to beat.
Brewski Hoffman's going to be very difficult to beat right there. Just because you maybe don't beat that, we're talking about one of the five best pass rushers in college football history in Teddy Brewski.
Yeah, when he left school,
he was the all-time leader. Yeah,
broke Derek Thomas' record. Yeah, that's where company to be in. Yeah, some of those, and let's not forget, some of those Larry Smith teams are pretty special, even though they used a variety of fronts. It's right up there. Again, maybe Brooks Reed, Ricky Elmore, and
who was
DeAndre
across
Reed.
From Antonio Smith, the professional hitman that became the 10th pick in the draft?
I can't even remember, to be honest. And my recollection was Smith was inside quite a bit too.
Right.
I know he played D end in the pros. I think it was more of a D tackle at Arizona. But that's also like saying, can such and such be one of the best quarterbacks in Arizona? It's not a deep group.
Right.
It's Arizona's had much more success on the interior defensive line than they had at the D end position.
Jake Fisher is listening in and talking about the Ironwood Ridge already getting a shout out now. Jake Fisher, I am curious. You should get in here and you should type in your remarks about what you think about Jedd Fisch and what he's doing so far. But while we all do that, you got to pay the bills as well. BetMGM. Now, you might say to yourself, Mike, what should I bet with Arizona football? Been saying this from day one. Bet the over on Arizona football. Back the A to the fullest. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code PHNX. There's a few different offers depending on where you live, but for our Arizona audience, place your first bet and receive up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if it loses with BetMGM. Again, make sure to use bonus code PHNX. Check out the show notes for details. And now let's hear Shane with the disclaimer.
Disclaimer, 21 plus to wager. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. U.S. promotional offers not available in Washington, D.C., Mississippi, Nevada, New York, and Ontario. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Colorado, D.C., Illinois, Indiana, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, Wyoming. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369, New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP, Arizona. 1-800-522-4700, Kansas, Nevada. 1-800-327-5050, Massachusetts. 1-800-BETS-OFF, Iowa. 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help, Michigan.
All right. So now back to Elijah Rushing, back to obviously Keona Wilhite as well. The other thing that's really important about this, Brad, is that this isn't like when you and I are growing up, or heck, even when Jake Fisher was growing up, where it was scattered throughout the city. Now, again, South Point got its kids, but when I was growing up, we had 4 Division I players at Saguaro. You had 2 that went to Cal. You had 1 that went to NAU. You had another one that went somewhere else. And Reggie Robertson, Mike Wells, et cetera, et cetera. Sabino obviously always had a lot of guys. You had Mike Safer, you had Brian Poley-Dixon. It was spread all throughout the state. Amphi had kids, or the city. South Point gets all the kids now. Now, again, there's a few exceptions, and they generally end up at CDO. But South Point has pretty much a monopoly on the in-city kids, the truly elite kids. When you put somebody like Elijah Rushing and then Keona as well, that's really a awesome step forward because you're really taking a step to consolidating Tucson right there.
Yeah, if you look at it, let's just look at this current class right now. There are 4 guys in town with D1 offers. And again,
right.
2 of them don't have committable offers from my understanding.
Right.
3 are at South Point, 1's at CDO. With we mentioned the other lineman, but Woodard, if you look
Woodard's
at guys,
is not committable in my opinion. But
I don't think so either. I think he would be because he hasn't gotten a lot of other offers, and Arizona doesn't have any O-line. I think, to me, he looks like if he goes to Arizona, he'll probably go in as a preferred walk-on or even like a blue shirt or gray shirt. But yeah, so nailing down South Point is vital. And I personally, I don't like the way it is now. I don't like the fact that every kid's going to South Point. I don't think it's good for Tucson football. Again, when I grew up, I'm a few years older than you. It was Saguaro, Sabino, Amphi. Those were the big 3. And then
all the schools that I named.
But you also had Hargrave at Flowing Wells a few years later.
There would be a kid at Choya here or there. A Sunnyside would have a kid.
Quite a few kids at Sunnyside, and even up until a few years ago, all the Sunnyside kids stayed home.
Right.
Once Sanchez left. So I don't think Tucson football. I think overall they're producing more D1 guys, but yeah, it's not as good. Again, just look at it. Look at this. We always joke about my son, and I've had many people like, you'd send him to Flowing Wells. Well, probably, yeah.
All right, Brad, I'm going to call – Brad, let's say by the time that young Tyler is in 8th grade, and you're looking at him, and Tyler is about 6'2", 270, and you're like, man, this guy's got some real potential to him. And if South Point comes calling and they say, listen, man, you can go against the best kids in the city, you're going to get a higher level of competition. William Brad Alice is saying we're still sending young Tyler Alice to Flowing Wells?
There'd be a very good chance I do. Again, because I don't like it. B, I had the chance to send them to a private school under scholarship. For those of you who know this backstory, with my kids adopted from foster care, they get some perks. I really like the neighborhood schools. And if I happen to move to a Marana or a Valley, I'd consider. But yeah, I mean, unless I knew my son could not succeed at these other schools, I don't believe they can't. I would be hard pressed because, again, so much of recruiting now is done in the summer.
Right.
I'd much rather save my gas money driving to South Point every day to drive up to Phoenix for the Spark Camp and then to LA and then take them to the San Diego State Camp. So again, am I saying I wouldn't know, but man, I just really like when the neighborhood schools are good,
You know what I also like too about what Elijah Rushing did as well, and we're going to get to that in just a second. But first, Tap and Bottle watch parties. William Brad Alice has been to these many times, and Tyler Alice. If you want to get a look at what a future 5-star lineman could look like, and a future 5-star pitcher as well, show up to the Tap and Bottle watch parties for all the away football and basketball games. We'd love to see you up there. And again, this Saturday, by the way, Scott and Rebecca having a 6-year a reunion or a 6-year celebration, I believe, at Tap and Bottle, and the following week as well. So again, check it out, Tap and Bottle. I will be there. Elijah Rushing, really, he's kind of carving his own way right here. Curious Skeeb, I'm curious if this is Eastside Skeeb on Twitter, said, I'm so proud of Elijah. He made the right move and will forever be a legend. It would have been easy for him, Brad, to go somewhere else, be another dude. And, going to Arizona is a unique move right there for somebody of this caliber in the ratings era. And it shows you, too, the confidence in Fisch, but it also shows you that he's betting on himself.
Yeah, and but I think it's in the NIL era, suddenly being local has some advantages it didn't have before.
Right.
Because I talked up to 5 people last night, 3 of whom I've never talked football recruiting with. They were talking Elijah Rushing.
Right.
I don't know what the rules are with AIA, but if I'm Elijah Rushing, as soon as I'm done with whatever sport I'm playing, and whether that's just football, I don't know if he wrestles or track, or I'm in every commercial.
Right.
So I think Justin Spears said it where he's like, how many restaurants are trying to get an Elijah Rushing burrito right now? And maybe it was the 247 Nashville guy. I mean, it's a unique opportunity. It's also because let's say he went to Oregon and he can get some good NIL money. But he's not going to play as early as he will at Arizona. So he has a chance to even bolster that some more.
But the other thing, too, that Fisch did that's also very smart here that I think is underrated and all this, you bring it. Listen, Cruz Rushing might never be a Division I actual player like outside of special teams. But if you've got a certain amount of scholarships, and if you think that, we bring him in, maybe he does have that potential, but either way, he can be a special teams guy. That is always going to help, especially when you're recruiting somebody that's as high profile as his brother, Brad.
Okay. So you've got a scholarship you weren't using.
Right.
And you get a special teams performer who also brings in his brother. I mean, it's not even a calculated risk, in my opinion. As long as you think he's a competent enough athlete, which he appears to be, to play.
You walk on in Florida or wherever he was going to go, you're a competent enough athlete.
Yeah, and again, he had some. I think he had some 1AA offers. I can't think of BCS or whatever it is. FCS. So yeah, he's a legit athlete. If he doesn't do anything other than run down kicks and doesn't surrender a long kickoff return to someone because he messes up, it's worth it.
Right.
Because by all accounts, quality kid, quality family. You got the brother. Even if they didn't get the brother, it's still pretty good. Pickup.
And again, it's also a South Point look right there.
Exactly. And again, people were very critical of Fisch for bringing in some of these lesser in-state kids in the transfer portal that first year.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's
Drake Anderson, all those dudes.
And even though Maldonado's playing, but what'd that do? It opened up doors at other schools up in Phoenix,
right? Which
is now starting to pay. So again, those scholarships weren't big. It's not like you took a scholarship away from a kid who's now at USC.
It's not like you had Bijan Robinson knocking on your door and you're like, dude, sorry, Cruz Rushing just got it, man.
Yeah, I mean, Drake Anderson, maybe he chased away one of those. No one of significance.
Let me ask you this.
Again, was Sean Miller dumb for bringing in the other Tubelis brother?
No.
This
is always what would drive me crazy, too, is like when the great Kevin Woodman would talk about how he doesn't give scholarships to kickers, but you're going to give it to the fourth string safety. Again, it's a different argument, obviously, but
it's the same thing. I mean, everything. you don't have to have 85 scholarship players who are stars.
Right.
Some of those guys can be special teams. Maybe you just bring in a really good kid who's going to be a great practice player for 4 years, who's going to make your team better. It's just like these people who are like, well, that play only gained 1 yard. Yeah, but it set up a play later on in the game. I mean, everything has its purpose. You have 84 kids. About 40 of them are going to play meaningful minutes. So what do you do with those other 45 scholarships? Well, maybe you have a backup kicker. Maybe you have a 4-string safety. Maybe you have a kid who bolsters the GPA. And maybe you have the brother of a 5-star who shows up on campus a year later.
Let's start talking about, though, how this defense now all of a sudden starts to shape out there a little bit. But first, 4 peaks. Brad, we got to come up with one other peak defensive end. We've got 3 peaks right now with Elijah Rushing, Keona Wilhite, and Deuce Davis. We need one more peak to emerge in there, and we could have 4 peaks on the football field. But you could also have the 4 Peaks official brew of PHNX Sports. Check it out. Check out 4 Peaks Brewer, 4 Peaks Pub to keep up with the latest on Arizona's hometown brewery. Must be 21 years or up to enjoy responsibly. And then one more. Oh, geez. Brad, how's your sleep going right now? Is it better or is it worse?
Maybe it's a little worse.
All right. You know what? Brad is fighting the good fight, but sooner or later he's going to have to give in to OGs. OGs, don't miss it when it comes to flavor and effects. So get your pink lemonade gummies while you can. Check out OGs online at ogsbrands.com and on Instagram at ogsbrands. You can find their products at your local dispensary. Must be 21 years or up. Get the strawberries and cream CBD THC 1-to-1 ratio. All right. On the defensive side of the ball now, it's becoming fascinating because you've now got some young players at that linebacker unit, and then we're going to get to the D-line. You've got Jacob Manu, who's going to be here for 3 more years. Put up a lot of stats last year. I think we both agree that he's good, but I think you make a very good point. We'll know if he's going to be able to take that next level when he starts getting those tackles closer up to the line of scrimmage. But then on top of him, you got Leviticus Sua coming in, 4-star kid out of Mater Dei. You got Justin Flo, multiple years of eligibility. At that linebacker spot, all of a sudden, you got some dudes, Brad.
Yeah, and I'm still pretty high on the cornerback. Again, I think the defense is going to still be a work in progress this year. But yeah, you're bolstering it. You're bringing in quality depth. You're bringing in young guys who at least have the potential. And a lot of this is on the coaching staff,
right? Because
if we still have one question about this coaching staff, it's can they coach? They can recruit, they can market, they can change the culture. But we just don't know what they're going to be able to do with, developing players. We've seen glimpses. Right. I mean, obviously, you like what you've seen from the wide receivers and some of the running backs and things like that. But as a staff, as a whole, can they continue to develop talent? And if they can, then Arizona is going to be good. Because I saw this somewhere. I might have been on Jason's board, but, X's and O's and Larry's and Joe's. But there's also turning those Larrys and Joes to being able to execute the X's and O's. Right. And that's now where the staff is at. Right. Can they strengthen conditioning, skill development, scheming, put these guys in the right place to make plays and develop them into guys who can make plays? One thing
they have shown, though, Brad, is they have, and you're exactly right on all those points, but they've also shown, too, that they have a pretty good ability to find under-the-radar type players. You look at, Jacob Manu, perfect example right there. Tanner McLaughlin, Wendell Moe. These are guys that are probably going to be, McLaughlin's obviously older, but these are guys that are going to be kind of linchpins going forward that were overlooked, and they were overlooked at big-time schools like Pauley and Servite.
Dorian Singer's another guy that they kind of found and it's fun. Yeah, and again, I'm encouraged because again, I know a lot of people go, well, they only won 1 game year 1. Yeah, but they were a completely different team by the end of the year.
Correct.
They put a scare into Utah.
They were competitive. We were not competitive the previous year.
And they weren't competitive much early in this. Look at that San Diego State game. Last year, at least offensively, they continued to evolve and get better.
You got 5 wins. That's a win. Going into last year, if you were to say you get 5 wins after a 20-game losing streak, yes.
So I feel good about it. Again, I'm not convinced. I don't know for sure. Just like I don't know for sure if Tommy Lloyd can string together 5 tournament wins. But I like the direction both of those programs are headed. So, but you've got to develop the guys because you are bringing in talent. When you look at the last 2 recruiting classes, and again, from all indications, there may be 2 or 3 more bigger names now joining this class that we're not necessarily talking about yet. Guys who aren't necessarily on the outward-facing radar screen, shall we say. And if they can do that and get this to be a fringe top 25 class, you got to really like the direction of Arizona football, because if you bring in that kind of talent, you're also going to be able to bring in bigger talent on the transfer portal.
Well, let's talk about that, Brad. That's called a good tease right there. DeMond Williams is the quarterback now that is in Arizona's sights. DeMond Williams' father, I remember him. He played at Pima when Jeff Skurin was running things, and I believe he went off to play at Michigan State. DeMond Williams, talking with some people, is about as good a quarterback as there is in the state. Obviously, Raiola has moved out. And if you were able to get DeMond Williams after getting Elijah Rushing, it shows 3 things: that you're always going to be able to get good quarterbacks, that you're going to be able to build off Elijah Rushing, and that you're really making a huge dent in state.
Yeah, I mean, you look at defensive line and quarterback are maybe the 2 most important positions in college football.
Right.
And if you can bring in quality guys who happen to be quality in-state guys, obviously Williams is currently committed to Ole Miss, but they keep bringing in other quarterbacks. So, right. Whether they are doing that because they feared losing Williams or they just would rather have a kid from Florida instead of Arizona, I don't know. But, yeah.
Their loss is our gain.
If you can get him coming in, again, to add to that quarterback room with, Brady Dorman, with Fafita, maybe one more year of Delore, it's a nice group.
It really, and think about it this way, Brad. I've always felt what was the best. I mean, Stoops, obviously you had a great quarterback room where you had Nick Foles, you had Matt Scott, and you always had a third stringer that was going to go to Rutgers or somewhere else that was going to still play in the NFL. And then obviously in the late 90s, you had a nice one where you had Keith, to a lesser extent, OJ, and Jason Johnson as the third.
And Brady Batten as well. He was pretty good.
I like Brady Batten as well. But this all of a sudden becomes fascinating because you've got high profile Tom Savage, good call. You've got high profile dudes right here. Now, again, Fafita obviously comes with question marks because he's our size. But I do like Fafita a great deal. Braden Dorman is a 4-star kid. DeMond Williams, 4-star kid. These are guys that had a lot of different options, Brad, and were thought of very highly.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is no matter what you want to say, quarterback evaluation is maybe the toughest thing in sports.
Unless you're Chief.
We'll see, because the guy he loved in the draft a few years ago is finally getting his chance to start at Green Bay. But just look at the number of 4-stars who've come to Arizona and not done anything.
Right.
Whether it's,
Richard Kovalchuk, Tim Rattay, Ryan O'Hara. We can keep going on and on and on.
Lyons was a 4-star kid.
That's right.
The guy who's now leaving North Texas on his 5th, Gunnell, was
Brent
a 4-star kid. Nick Costa was a borderline 5-star kid. So go down that list. You just never know exactly what you have.
Right.
Because, again, Jason Johnson didn't have a lot of options. Jason Johnson was a very good quarterback.
Right.
Nick Foles walked on at Arizona after transferring from Michigan State.
Originally committed to ASU. Ha, 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 yeah. ASU. Chris Heaver, at least spell it right, Boog, and he was not a 4-star.
No, Heaver was like a 2.5.
He was like a 2-star kid.
He was a Makovic discovery, and the Makovic had a dream that he should start Heaver, and that should tell you all you need to know about. But yeah, so you guys never know what the quarterback position is just and it's a weird one in the NFL. I mean, for every Joe Burrow, who's the number 1 overall pick, who plays in the Super Bowl, there's a Tom Brady who could barely start at Michigan. But that being said, stockpile quarterbacks. And if you can bring in 1 4-star every class and you hit on 2 of them, you're in really good shape.
This staff also, the things that really impressed me, though, is how many boxes they do check off. Now, again, the big box that we still don't know about totally is the coaching at the highest level, although I'm inclined to believe that Fisch is going to be, at the very worst, okay. We don't know about the defense. That's fair to say. But from a recruiting, from an evaluation, from a roster fit, this coaching staff gets it and gets it in a big way, Brad, in a way that every other coaching staff had flaws to a certain extent. It maybe with the exception of Stoops early on. Rich Rod obviously didn't care about recruiting. Sumlin, Boog's boy right there, didn't care about anything. Makovic was obviously a train wreck. You had, with Dick Tomey, loved Dick Tomey, but he was never able to marry both the offense and the defense together. It was always one or the other. This staff at least seems to know what it needs to do and is on a plan to execute it, which I think is maybe something we take for granted a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it again without the name value, everyone wanted Brennan. I did too.
Right.
If I had told you Brennan would go 1-10 the first year, 5-7 the next year, you're like, oh, well, he's turning it around.
Right.
So again, there have been some hiccups. Again, you never want to lose to NAU. That's the rock bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I blame that mostly on Sumlin.
But that's not a mic drop moment. There's only really one person that doesn't like Fisch at this point, and that's the point that keeps being brought up is that, oh, well, you lost to NAU. Dude, that's one game, and that was like literally the worst, probably the least talented team that we've seen.
Yeah, so again, everything's trending in the right direction, and now you just hope they continue to build upon it. And from a recruiting standpoint, again, I'll admit I didn't love this class, but rushing changes the narrative.
You know what's different to me about it, Brad, and I get your point. All these kids, though, when you look at it, they almost all have, and now again, there's about 5 or 6 that don't, so can't spin that. But there's also almost all these kids still, even the ones that are the low 3 stars, they have offers from TCU, they have offers from an Oregon State or something like that. And with the way that this staff has shown that they can evaluate pretty well, I give them a little bit of a pass right there.
Yeah, but again, there's also a lot of kids who chose Arizona over Utah State and New Mexico State.
There's about 5 or 6 of those kids for sure.
And again, when they all pan out and prove me wrong, I'll be the first.
Wendell Moe gives the middle finger to Brad Ellis there.
But Wendell Moe was the 25th guy who was found in like July after signing day. Not July the year before.
Jacob Manu gives the middle finger to Brad Ellis.
Again, I actually like Manu's tape too because he played.
I did too.
But when you got 3 guys from Apollo and only one of them has a Pac-12 offer,
those are all questionable for sure.
Yeah, but again, you're not stuck at signing 25 guys, so I'm not as upset about that.
Right.
And Brad Rich, I usually agree with you, but how many walk-ons started on the defensive line in Arizona?
Rich Rod did not recruit.
He recruited some things very well. He was very active in the quarterback skill position. Went into some big high schools to pull some guys with pec injuries. But
it was routinely the smallest team in the conference.
But at the same time, yeah, he didn't necessarily hit the lines as hard as he should. And to me, that's where you have to build every class around the lines and quarterback. Everything else, I think you can Brad, I never take chalk. No. Oh, no, I never.
I was going to say, you don't know William Brad Ellis very well then.
No, again, but my whole point being is this class didn't look like the 22 class.
Right.
And now it's starting to look like the 22 class.
By the way, the 22 class.
Williams,
the 22
class is fine. I don't care what you do with the rest of it.
The 22 class, by the way, we talked about this a little bit before. I believe the 22 class is going to go down as one of the 3 or 4 best in school history.
Yeah, it's going to probably go down with a couple of those Tomey classes in the.
It won't beat 90. It won't beat 90 because that's all that you have 2 college football Hall of Famers. You have like 6 NFL players, all that. But you got Cowing, you've got T-Mac, you've got Jonas Sabanea, you got Mo, you got Delora, you got Fafita. You go over to the other side, you got Prysock, you got Manu, you got all. I mean, that is a loaded class right there. So that was obviously very good work. Now let's look at Arizona's schedule this year. Let's see.
I do want to say something though. A couple other things to throw out here.
Yeah, go. What do you got?
One, the thing I think is most significant is he and Wilhite guarantee you got the best 2 guys in town. And I looked at it going back to Fisch's first class. There are 5 quality in-state players or in-town players, and he has now landed 3 of them.
Right.
He did not get in Dean last year. I'm not sure how much they liked him, to be honest. And I don't mean any disrespect to the kid. He wound up at Oklahoma State. I just don't remember a lot of hype around him in my circles.
Right.
And the other kid is the kid.
It was a weird situation too, because he started at South Point, then he went to Tankaverde, and
and the other kid was what? Jonah Miller.
Right.
Who I don't know if he's even on a roster anywhere.
He's not. He's at a junior college.
So maybe that's not. But they got Rocker, who originally committed to Sumlin, but he stayed committed. So that's good. And the other thing that is big about rushing, and we may see Wilhite. Previous to this, he had never landed a top 10 in-state kid. And again, I think a lot of times the in-state rankings are a little wonky compared to other states that have more eyes on them. But when you're, previous high guys in the rankings were 11th twice, I think Stovall, and I forget who the other one was. You need to land some of these big time guys. Right. And as good as Stoops was, he had trouble landing some of the, obviously, Andrews goes to Oklahoma and Brewer goes to Texas before eventually coming back here. And Neal went to Notre Dame before eventually coming back here. You got to land some of those guys. And for the first time, at least, rushing is one of those guys. You missed out on Bijan.
Oh, by the way, Bijan Robinson. I'm going to ask every guest on this right now. And again, it's just a guess. We don't know. He's obviously off to the NFL. If Bijan Robinson were coming around to South Point right now, not during the heyday of the Kevin Sumlin mess, but coming around right now, what chance do you give Arizona of getting Bijan?
Like 25.
Okay.
I think he always kind of had his eyes set on leaving. I was very surprised that SC wasn't in it to the end because he worshipped
Reggie Bush. Right.
I know there are some hard feelings with the family about his uncle not being in or was it uncle or grandfather or in the
Paul Robinson
Ring of Honor, but I'm one of the few guys who doesn't think he should be because he really didn't play football at Arizona.
Yeah,
it's kind of like putting Kenny.
It's kind of like putting it's kind of like putting Michael Bates in there.
Bates at least played football at Arizona.
He was.
He played 2 seasons of football. I think Robinson played like half a season.
True.
That being said, if that would have landed Bijan, put him up.
Put him on. We don't care. Put him in right there.
But Fisch would have at least kept trying.
Right. Fisch would have kept trying, and that's the thing, is he would have kept trying until the end, and he wouldn't have looked for an excuse not to recruit him. And I think that's where it becomes a little bit different for me as well. All right. Now, let's talk a little bit about the schedule because I'm looking at this right here, and I've been telling everybody to back the A on this one and that you got to be able to find all of this. But first, what do I have left right here? I got OG. Oh, Shady Rays. Brad Alice, what kind of sunglasses do you wear? You're a cool guy.
I am currently wearing a pair of hand-me-down Ray-Bans.
All right.
I don't spend money on sunglasses because I break them.
But again, Brad Alice is naturally cool. I am not naturally cool. So I need everything possible to make me look cool like Damon behind the scenes right there. I'm sure Damon has a pair of Shady Rays. Now, say, Mike, you could never look cool. I challenge you and say that you're wrong on that. Shady Rays is it's giving out the best deal of the year. Go to shadyrays.com and use code word PHNX for 50% off 2+ pairs of polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 250,000 people. Okay. Now,
that kind of deal, I could risk breaking some. I may have to look into that.
Damon, add yourself in real quick. We got to see. Look at these things right here. Look how cool that is, man.
I need those for my son to play outfield in.
Yeah, man. $50, lifetime warranty, Shady Rays.
You can wear those things to the beach. You can wear them as your eye protection on a motorcycle. You can do anything with those, Damon.
Absolutely anything.
Dude, we like it, Damon. Thanks for showing that, my man. All right. Now,
why is he at somewhere much cooler than we are?
Oh, guess where he's at? He's at Four Peaks.
I know. I could tell. It looks
right.
Nice.
Okay. All right. Now let's talk about the Arizona football schedule right here. We're going to talk about where Arizona's going to get their wins right now. All right. Arizona is going to beat NAU the first game of the season. We agree.
Yes.
Mississippi State, second game of the season. New coach, a lot of new players on the roster. I would favor Mississippi State, but Arizona's got a puncher's chance in that game.
Yeah, I'd say about 30% chance because it's on the road. I'd rather have got them at home this year as opposed to last year. But yeah, puncher's chance.
UTEP, Arizona's going to roll them. We're Arizona right now is at 2-1.
Yeah,
you agree, correct? All right, now, excuse me. All right, Stanford. Arizona's going to beat Stanford. Stanford sucks.
Stanford's a couple years away, although that guy's recruiting like a mother right now.
I like him a lot, but Stanford has next to no talent on that roster. I'm back in the A right here. I got 3-1 at this point. What do you got, William?
Yeah, I think 3-1 sounds about right.
Okay. Now you got a little bit of a tough stretch right here. You got Washington, SC, at Washington State, and then Oregon State. That's a tough it's a tough gauntlet right there. I don't give Arizona much.
I think the best situation is if you go 2-2 in that stretch, you're feeling really good. If you can, you have to at least carve out one of them.
You got to find one win.
I'm not sure how good Washington State is, but they're at home. If that thing's played at night, that could be tough. SC is a daunting task. Washington's really good. You at least get them at home.
You at least get them at home.
I think Oregon State might take a slight step back this season, but they're still a pretty good team.
I need one.
If you can get me 2 out of that, you're in great shape. If you can get me 1, I'm still feeling pretty good.
I'm still feeling good about it. Let's just say that Arizona steals 1 game in there. So you go 1-3 during that. So you come out of that, you're 4-4 at that point. Now you got the home stretch where I think you got some wins to be had right here. UCLA at home, I think you could absolutely beat UCLA. I actually am going to pick Arizona to beat UCLA in that game at home. Homecoming. Or is it homecoming? No, I don't need it. Doesn't matter. Who do you got in that game, Brad?
I think that's a pure toss-up, but let's just, for the sake of this exercise, give Arizona the win.
All right. Colorado, I think they're going to crush Colorado. I think Colorado's a year or 2 away.
I think a lot of it depends on where – I think if Colorado starts slow, that team could implode, and that's kind of my guess. I don't like playing that one on the road in November, but Arizona's had some success in Colorado, to be honest. So let's give them the win.
Are you back in the A on that one?
I will.
All right. So we got Arizona at 6-4 at this point. Then you got keep in mind the over/under is 4.5 right there. We've been telling you. Then you got Utah. That's a bad matchup for Arizona. I don't like Arizona to beat Utah.
Yeah, I like it at home, but no, that looks like because Utah's probably playing for something pretty juicy right there. They're probably slugging it out with USC and maybe Washington for a league crown there.
Anthony Humbert, by the way, where have you been, Anthony Humbert? It's been a long time. What does it mean to you to back the A right there? That's how we are right there, Anthony Humbert. Good to see you, my friend. Now, Arizona's going to beat ASU in the last regular season game. They are going to be 7-5, Brad Ellis. That's the 7 wins right there. That's how we got it. Jake Fisher predicted 7 wins during the regular season as well.
Yeah, I feel anything you gotta get to 500. If you can get 6, 7, if you can get 8, fantastic. But give me 6 or 7, and I'm feeling really, really good about the direction of the program. And I'll be honest, although it would be a little bit deflating with the way the schedule, I think 5 is still a good coaching job. I know a lot of people won't. As long as you are competitive in most of them. But yeah, I think the goal is, to me, the over-under should be about 6.5 for feeling really good. And if you can get to 6, you're good. If you can get to 7, you feel great.
The big question that a lot of people have had about Jedd Fisch, I think it's a fair question, is at what point, does Jedd Fisch is obviously an ambitious guy. Does he have bigger goals? Here's all I'm going to say. Jedd Fisch is showing that he can get the players that he needs at Arizona. And if you look at this roster, you look at it right now and then you look at the following year, because that 2022 class we talked about, they'll almost all be juniors and whatnot. This is a team next the following year that is absolutely loaded. Because again, you would have T-Mac as a junior. You would have Montana Craig in there as well. You would have Keon Burnett. You would have Jonah. You would have Wendell Moe. You got Elijah Russian. You got Wilhite. You got Manu. You could have Flo, Sua. Ephesians Price Hawk. That is a loaded team right there, Brad, and one that could probably, especially with SC out of the way, could probably make a little bit of a run right there.
No, they're definitely trending upward, and frankly, if Jedd Fisch is good enough to get a quote unquote better job, not a lateral move,
not Missouri. We're not talking about Missouri or anything like that. Like an LSU, like a real.
You know what? I'll even go with an Oklahoma State, a slightly better job. It has to be reasonably better.
All right.
Then you still feel pretty good because that means you did the right thing. And would you be shocked if they promoted Brendan Carroll to head coach?
I mean, that's kind of where you look at it. But all I'm saying though is that I think he's showing that he's got some real upward trajectory here, and that they've been able to navigate some things in the portal that they haven't been able to. By the way, we have a new read right here. Damon behind the scenes. Damon is a leader of men, by the way. Damon, we appreciate this. All right, here's the deal with Wink. All right, a seltzer with a wink of THC. Get it? How high will it get you? Just a wink. Get it? Very, very funny right there. I like this. Okay, so check out Drink Wink and countdowndrink.com to utilize your drink finder to locate a store near you. You can also order directly online, Wink only, and only 2.5 milligrams per can. Again, get ready for liftoff, countdown, all kinds of good stuff. No third-party producers. Wink is made in-house, currently available in 11 states. Wink. New spot right there. I actually didn't see that right there. Hyphy seltzers. I do like that. But I think Fisch is also showing, though, that, depending on how the conference goes, I think you can probably win at a pretty high level at Arizona, Brad.
Yeah, and I think either way the conference may go, you can win at a high level at Arizona. Because
you're not worried about SMU coming in and running things?
No, because you're either getting rid of two of your biggest issues, USC and UCLA, or you're going into a Big 12 that's losing Texas and Oklahoma.
Right.
And here's the other thing. I know people are like, well, Jedd's always been a journeyman. Maybe he doesn't want to be a journeyman anymore. And if you can consistently win 8 to 10 games at Arizona, what is he making? $3 million a year?
Yeah.
That'll get to $4 million. Your daughters are I think one's about to enter high school, the other's about to enter junior high.
Right.
You've got a pretty good, there's a reason a lot of us talking on here live in Tucson.
Tucson Tucson is way underrated, man.
I don't
care what anybody
not a
says.
Great time to be in Tucson. As I did 5 baseball games in 5 days, and I'm still trying to get rehydrated. No, but I'm starting about September 15th through about May 15th. It's hard to beat that weather.
Tucson is way cooler than Phoenix. I don't care what anybody says. I would much rather live here. Phoenix feels like it's 25 degrees hotter. It's all concrete. Whereas in Tucson, you've got scenery here in Tucson as well. I back Tucson. I back the A, Brad Alice, as do you.
Again, I think at this point in his career, I don't think he's just going to keep moving laterally. He'd have to get a really nice job. Just like, Tomey turned down some jobs.
Tomey turned down some very good jobs.
Lute turned down some jobs. Miller didn't pursue a lot of jobs. There's a reason. Again, Arizona basketball vastly different than Arizona football.
No.
Now, if LSU comes calling, yeah, we're all mad at Jay Johnson. We understand why he left. If UCLA comes calling, Michigan, yeah, you're leaving for those jobs. But I'm not sure he's leaving for Texas Tech. I'm not sure.
Oklahoma State's a great
Missouri.
example right there. Probably a fringe top 25 program, but is it really worth getting up and moving for? I don't think so.
I don't know. Yeah. So again, I think if he's getting the call from Baton Rouge, he's doing something right, and we should be happy.
That's exactly where I'm at. Speaking of doing something right, Brad Rich, great point right there. We back the T and we back the A. By the way, guess whose initials are TA? Tyler Alice right here. When does Tyler begin Hell Week for his middle school, Brad? Is this coming up?
He'll have it. They get started a couple weeks after the school year starts, so mid-August.
Right.
We still got too much baseball between now and then with some club stuff going on.
All right, Brad, where can they find you? You're going to get some podcasts out because, again, the people need you.
Yeah. I put out 2 last week, and I'm going to be doing more. If anyone saw it, I've been doing what I call review and review. It's a film review mixed with another type of review. We'll do an Elijah Rushing one. She should have a few out. Again, it's just finding that quiet time with the kids home, and but baseball's over. Volleyball's only 1 day a week, so we're finding some time now.
He is the great William Brad Allis. Follow him on Twitter at WSR Brad. I am merely Mike Luke, and follow me at Iron Mike Luke. Damon behind the scenes. Damon, you've been awesome. Jacob Franklin will get a very good report from you about you. I really appreciate you, my guy. Came through Mr. Reed right there. Came through very handy. All right, everybody. Going to be back with you on Monday. But again, appreciate all the comments. Back the A. Remember, get on BetMGM and back the A. Go over on the Arizona Wildcats. You'll thank me later. But for Brad Allis, I'm Mike Luke. You've been listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast.